Hail, Sir Phil Kohler, hail, and well met to you, kind hipster dwarf hunter.
Griffin of McElroy. Tell me a story.
I'll tell you about Knights of Pen and Paper 2. It's a preview build of Cop 2, as I call it. Here, I'm gonna make you, Phil. I'm gonna add you to my adventuring party. I'm gonna pick the right class, the right race. Have you played any of Knights of Pen and Paper?
No, but I always thought that the first one looked like the kind of game that I would really enjoy. But before I managed to get around to it, bam, they're coming out with a sequel.
Come up with that sequel. They also had a Knights of Pen and Paper +1, which I think dropped on Steam. But yeah, it's a really neat role-playing game that kind of mimics the tabletop experience. You can make characters. Each race has different benefits, different abilities, different stats. Same goes for the class and the real human being that controls that class at the table. So there I just made I believe a surfer human hunter.
Sure.
Who has... each class has like different abilities that they can learn, and you can find new classes as you play. And then they also get different benefits to basically strength checks, dexterity checks, and magic checks. So you create those classes, and then you can equip them with new equipment and level them up.
So this is really about emulating the pen and paper RPG experience in a very literal sense. Like not...
Yeah, imagine like a fusion of like D&D and like classic JRPG combat.
Sure.
One cool thing is you get to choose how many enemies you fight against in most battles, which is kind of cool. Like a lot of quests will challenge you to kill a certain number of enemies. So if you're feeling saucy, you can just try and knock it out in a single fight by adding all of these creatures and taking them out in one go. You can have up to 5 party members of different classes and different specializations and stuff. And yeah, you can take on some pretty big fights. And then yeah, you do stuff like roll initiative to determine who goes when. There are certain negative like status ailments that you have to roll saving throws to get out of.
Sure.
So there's some like pretty classic D&D shit going on, but it's all very, very streamlined.
What's the actual progression in the game? Like, obviously I see you're leveling up and stuff, but are you moving through like a story here?
It's a very, very loose story. In Knights of Pen and Paper 2, the story is basically about this world's transition from first edition to second edition.
Okay.
So kind of like, yeah, like a real thing that people deal with in the D&D world. So this is cool. They changed how dungeons work in the game. So pretty early on, I ran into this dungeon where each room, you don't know what's going to be in here. Here I did a boulder trap. I ran into a boulder trap and then had to basically do a dexterity saving throw, which in true D&D fashion, the higher like green dice rating you have, the easier it is for you to pass that stuff. Same goes for like if you have a wizard with a lot of blue dice, a high blue score in checks where you have to do, a blue saving throw, they're going to be more likely to succeed than like a dumb fighter or something like that. But again, like it's super streamlined, right? You don't have like a charisma skill or whatever.
Yeah.
You just have these 3 dice. And yeah, I really liked the first Knights of Pen and Paper. And this is very, very similar. I think the production values are a lot better. Particularly this battle menu just shows you all of the commands you can do in one sort of bar instead of having to like click through a bunch of different sub menus showing all the different skills your characters have.
Sure.
Yeah, and the way that they handle dungeons is pretty cool. Like it's been this is a preview build, so like there's been a little bit of repetition, but it's been my favorite part of the game so far is hopping into these dungeons and negotiating these different traps and finding these different events. I found one event where I found a prisoner who showed me where on the map each trap was located, so
Nice.
I could know where to like avoid that stuff.
Are these dungeons completely randomized?
Yeah, they're totally randomized. You can go through them again and again because sometimes you will find other quests that will take you back into those dungeons, but they'll be different every time you go in. Yeah, the second time I went in, I actually found a new class, but I had a full party, and I don't have a way to get rid of party members yet, so I can't add that class to my roster yet. You can see that magazine button in the top left.
Yeah.
Basically, there is a version of Dungeon Magazine, the Wizards of the Coast magazine that like has like D&D content for you to play at your table. It kind of replicates that. Like you can purchase new players, and you can purchase new classes. There's not a lot of that stuff in the game yet.
Is that actual like straight up microtransactions, or is that in-game?
I'm not 100% sure. In the PC version, there's no in-app purchases. And I think it'll probably carry a bit of a higher price point than the iOS version.
Sure.
The iOS version will have in-app purchases, and I imagine a lower initial price tag. But I think the IAP on the mobile version is like just to purchase more gold if you want it.
Sure.
You can see I've got some gold there up in the top right. You use that gold for a lot of stuff, though. Like you use it to travel. There's kind of like a nominal travel fee. There's a new investigation feature where you can look around rooms, kind of doing like a perception check, looking for treasure and stuff. That costs a little bit of gold. If your characters die, you have to spend some gold to resurrect them. And then, of course, you can purchase new items and shit from the in-game store. One really cool thing you can do with gold is buy upgrades to the room where you're playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Sure.
And I'll show that menu here in just a bit. I didn't save up enough money to do that because I bought a new character who cost me a pretty penny. But yeah, that was one of the tougher fights in the game. There really is a lot of strategy. Like there's a threat meter that you have to manage. You have to like keep the aggro on your heaviest character, and you have to keep your team buffed and healed with a cleric or whatever, and then add status ailments to the enemy with your hunter character, and take out rows of enemies with your mage character. Like there's some pretty good, RPG ass shit going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
The battle mechanics. Here I'm adding a hipster elf thief. The hipster might be my favorite character model so far. But his price tag is pretty exorbitant.
Yeah, I'm noticing that. That's quite a bit. Is this what you blew your money on?
Yeah, and honestly, I think I should have made this you, because I don't know that you really make up the surfer lifestyle. Here I am purchasing, or trying to purchase, just window shopping and get an arcade machine. Each element that you add to the room gives you a permanent upgrade for your whole party. So like there's a mechanical element to it as well. Like if I got table hockey, I would get extra gold for each fight I did. There are rugs. My favorite is there's a miniatures set that you can use to actually add extra enemies to a fight to like make battles tougher, which makes sense because when you play a miniatures game, there's tons and tons of pieces on the board.
Yep, there it is. That's awesome.
Yeah, so there's like a bunch of really neat mechanics, a lot of which have been carried over from the first Knights of Pen and Paper. But there are also there's a crafting mechanic that I haven't even gotten to yet. That you can use to create new items and customize the items you already have. Here's the investigation feature, where you basically gamble to get these magnifying glasses, and the more you find, the better loot you can get. And then the revamped dungeons, I think, add a lot of is going to add a lot of replayability.
Yeah.
And this is just the preview build, so I haven't seen like how deep those dungeons can get. But
how soon is this coming out?
This is coming out on PC, iOS, and Android on May 14th. So pretty soon, here in just a couple weeks.
Yeah, so the biggest surprise for me, not having played the original and just seeing the art style and everything, there's a lot of depth to this.
Yeah, there sure is, and a lot of it's
more than I expected.
There's a lot of depth, but a lot of it's really streamlined. Like all of the equipment that you have just sort of modifies modifies your stats. So like your weapons, you don't really attack with your weapons. They just like change how much damage and what type of damage you do. So like by outfitting your character with different weapons and armor and accessories, you're just like sort of changing their stats instead of like changing how they function, if that makes any sense. It's like just a really easy to comprehend way of handling character management.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, this is Knights of Pen and Paper 2. It's out in just a couple weeks. I'll probably play it on iOS. I'm really hoping that the in-app purchasing like model isn't especially restrictive. Although it really wasn't in the first game. So I'm holding out hope. But yeah, thanks for watching. And we need like a sign off that's the same as Hail and Well Met, Sir Kohler. Godspeed.
Thanks for watching, and we'll be back with more fantasy game trash.
Godspeed, adventure.